got that nerd rage. Nerd rage. I got that nerd rage.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Nerd Rage Podcast. I'm Ryan Anderson, and joining me to my left is the Marvel guy, the Skyman Hype Man.
Brad Learman.
What's up, buddy?
Not much, man.
How's things going on your neck of the woods?
Oh, just a few job hunting prospects and some other miscellaneous expenses that I wish I didn't have to make.
Yeah, we've got all that back to school stuff kind of going on around us right now. I bet you're pretty glad not to be going back to school.
Yeah.
And actually, as far as it goes around here, like, it's just been chaos trying to get out of our driveway every day. So I don't really like the school season because they become more of a nuisance, and it's just a thing that I got to deal with now as we head into the fall season. But welcome back to class, kids. It's time to talk about some DC, Marvel, Miscellaneous, all that good stuff, and a very hot topic of the future of Spider-Man, which is going to be this week's The Big Talk. So let's start off with a little housekeeping, a little need to know the top of the show stuff that we like to do here. So some quick things. Disney Plus was tweeting about their content that's all going to be on Disney Plus, and they had every single one of their shows chime in. Did you see any of this?
No, I do not.
Okay,
I
so
don't know what you're talking about.
they were basically doing like, oh, we've got Lady and the Tramp, we got Dumbo, we got all this stuff. All these things are going to be coming over to Disney Plus. All this cool content that you should be excited about. And then Simpsons kind of chimed in there, and they went, well, what about us? That like worst content or worst transition ever or something like that. So long story short, it sounds like Simpsons are kind of not digging the Disney Plus. What do you think?
Oh, that's kind of odd.
Yeah.
Simpsons being a pretty highly rated animated comedy.
I mean, I don't know if they missed their Fox overlords or if this is just them joking about it, like doing an off-brand kind of joke to sound like they're not cool with it, but really they are. Yeah, I don't know. It just came across as like bad form, especially when everyone's like, yeah, let's all get on the bandwagon, and Simpsons are doing the comic book guy, crossed arms like, we're not a part of this. We're not feeling this. So I thought I'd throw that in there. I want to say thank you to everyone who showed up and met us at Silicon Valley Comic-Con, or some of the new faces that we did meet. I've got pretty much everybody's business card here, and maybe even some new sponsors that might be coming our way, Brad. Yeah. We'll be talking about that more in the future. There was some sad news about our friends over at Loot Crate. We might not be using them in the near future. We love their content and we love their product, but some sad news on that side of things. I won't go into it in excruciating detail, but basically, that might be a future without them soon, and we wish them the best no matter what, because we love their stuff. Also, we found out that Darwin Cook, who is a personal favorite of mine in terms of art, he might be getting his own street up in Canada, which I think is well deserved. I wanted to just pepper that one in there. The guy's awesome. You guys should definitely check out his work if you've never seen it before. Let's see what else here. We have a potential new guest on the show next week, and he was going to be on this week, but just because this week was chaotic as it was, we've got us coming back from a convention. We're going to go off to something over the weekend, and then we're going to be back here to do all this stuff all over again like we do every week. We just thought it'd be a great time next week to have on Zeno Robinson, who plays Cyborg on Young Justice, and this is getting close to the finale of the show for this season. So we thought, what better time to have him on to talk about it than next week. So we'll have him on to talk about what it's like on Young Justice and what it's like to do voiceover work. So keep a lookout for that. Let's see what else we got here. I want to say on a personal level, just saw Ready or Not. I highly encourage any of you guys to go and see that movie. Without spoiling it for Brad, because I know it just came out a couple days ago. It was such a surprise that I enjoyed it as much as I did. I thought, this will be kind of like this BC entry. It'll be fun for like a quick one-time thing, but I want to see like a whole universe of these movies, and I'll leave it at that. It was that enjoyable for me. And I think the only other thing I have to mention is that the Cloak and Dagger rumor that we dropped a couple episodes back, turns out it's true. The fact that they're going to now have that crossover. I didn't even realize, when we were talking about it as being a real thing, that was our rumor mill from the week before. And sure enough, it turned out to be right. And someone pointed that out to us over the weekend. So yeah. And to anyone I did meet out there, I mean, there was so many of you guys, and I don't want to forget anyone's name. So I'm just going to say thank you to all of you who were very kind. And even the one guy I took pictures with, and I'm sorry he came out blurry. His name was Marcus, but really awesome guy. So I think the only thing I have to mention is that if anyone wants to hit us up, I actually have a copy of the Tenet trailer, that new Christopher Nolan film. I probably shouldn't put it out in the public space, but if you want to see it, I do have it. So hit me up on Twitter or on our Gmail at nerdragepod@gmail.com. Let's see what else. You know what? Now that we've gotten pretty much everything out of the way, I think it's time for a little rumor mill. What about you, Brad?
Well, let's do it.
All right. So the rumor mill is actually a little bit loaded this week. First, we have coming from one of our sources who's been very good in the last couple times we've used him. He says that Ms. Marvel is going to get a show, and it's coming to Disney Plus. What do you think about that one, Brad?
Minor character. It's a decent way to, I guess, build up some sort of interest in her. Although I don't see her ever being used in the movies.
Okay, so being that this is rumor mill, I'm tentative to agree that this is actually happening. Now, I have nothing against our source. He knows how I feel about this. We already had a long discussion about it in private, but if it does happen, I'm excited for it because Ms. Marvel, again, more diversification, more extended content to really get you to appreciate that character. And they're going to put it on Disney Plus, according to what he says. So if this does happen, I don't know what to expect from it. If they're going to add a couple other characters, kind of do like a Young Avengers thing or something of that nature. I'm okay with this. I wasn't expecting this to be the news, but it kind of does make sense that they would start going in this direction because we've kind of fleshed out the big players in the Marvel universe. Now it's time to start going with some of the fresh faces, and Ms. Marvel seems like a good fit for now. That, and there's a new spinoff of The Shield that's potentially coming to Disney Plus. This one I have some disagreements about. I think that it makes no sense that it would go to Disney Plus. It depends on, I guess, how the ABC part of everything works out, because as you and I both know, Brad, Ike Perlmutter is kind of the TV head honcho for Marvel. So him and like Jeff Loeb are kind of running that division and making it what it is. So to see Shield spin off into something that feels more Marvel cinematic on the Disney Plus side doesn't seem to match up. So, I mean, if I'm guessing, what they would do is this would probably be what was originally reported, maybe on the last episode or the episode before, where we said that there was going to be a female-led Marvel entry with some sort of familiar face. So maybe more to what you said, and maybe Quake is going to get her own spinoff, or Mockingbird is going to get one. So this would kind of tie in with that, and I'm not sure if this will happen or not, but these are our two rumors for the week. Which do you think is more likely to happen, Brad?
Oh gosh, I think the Miss Marvel one's more likely.
Yeah, it does seem more on brand for Marvel to go in that direction, but again, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has run as long as it has, despite very mixed reviews over the years. So maybe they are planning some sort of weird spinoff for it. I just feel like with everything I've seen, they've gone so far in one particular direction. It's hard for them to spin off or go in a, bring it kind of back to the original concept of S.H.I.E.L.D. So yeah, I think I'd go with Ms. Marvel too. So there's that. Let's go through DC, Marvel, or Miscellaneous. Which one would you like to do this week, Brad?
let's go DC real quick.
DC it is. Okay, and as I said, for this week's The Big Talk, it will be about Spider-Man, so we'll get to that at the very end. All right, at TV Talk, our number 3 here for DC. Some quick things here, most of it being on the DC universe. No real Arrowverse talk has come out of this last week, so a little change of pace from our usual. We have brand new exclusive photos which are going up on our Twitter as soon as this episode is done, regarding Titans season 2, the new episode. It sounds like it's going to be really good. Apparently Jeff Johns wrote it, and the episode is titled Trigon, which from what I heard is a reworked version of the episode that we were supposed to get at the end of season 1, because they cut it like 1 episode short. I don't know if there's any real truth to that, but the fact that we're getting, I don't think it's really spoilers, but in the images that they've given us, a lot of the heroes have their eyes kind of blacked out by Trigon, so maybe he possesses them and has them fight against each other. We will see. What we do know, though, is that there is a new casting to the world of Titans, and it is Dr. Light, played by Michael Mosley, who some people will know from Fear the Walking Dead. I think him as Dr. Light is an interesting choice, because I usually think of like a skinny, more, twirl your mustache kind of villain type, but I think he'll fit just fine, and I can't wait to see what they do with Dr. Light, because he's always been a foe of the Teen Titans. So that's really what we got for Titans right now. Some sad news I have to bring up is that Krypton has been canceled. After 2 seasons and very solid reviews, so much so that even like the week before we found out about this cancellation, I was hearing rave reviews from people who don't normally like DC things. They're like, this is one of the best sci-fi shows on TV. I could see this going 5 seasons. And then like shortly after that, canceled. So why, how, not exactly sure. I don't know if it's ratings related or what, but they canceled it, and it's really sad to hear it, because I got to, I think, episode 5, because I was playing a little catch up. Too many shows out there, and it's quite good. I still have mixed thoughts on Doomsday, which they introduced, but I'm hearing that the finale introduces 2 elements that I've wanted to see for a long time, and the fact that we might not ever get a season 3 really hurts me, because I would have really loved to have seen those things. But not all is lost. We have the creator saying that the spinoff for Lobo, despite earlier reports saying that it was dead in the water, he's not dead. They're actually doing something with the character. They just haven't, put the whole piece together. And they're shopping around Krypton, so it could end up on HBO Max or on DC Universe. So there is still life in that little universe there that they've created. Do you want to see Krypton continue on, or what do you think about this?
I mean, if it's pretty highly rated amongst fans and non-fans alike, it would be sort of a shame to kind of get canned.
Yeah, because I know you're not in with all the DC stuff and everything, but, it just sucks to see any show that has a really solid fan base kind of just go to pasture. Kind of like what we were just talking about with Swamp Thing. On the TV side of things, it seems like DC just wants to keep putting content out there. I don't know if it's foolishly or if it's just because they know they can, and they know that they can drum up interest on the TV side more than the film side, but man, I just really want to see these shows get to 4 or 5 seasons like the CW ones seem to get to before they get canceled, or before they, get put out to pasture like Arrow did. So, yeah, sad news, but some hopeful optimism at the end there. Also, with the DC Universe and everything, it's worth mentioning that Ian Ziering, who was playing Blue Demon, I don't think that's too much of a spoiler at this point, on Swamp Thing, says there's still a chance that Swamp Thing may return. I think that's a little bit of a glass half full kind of statement. I mean, I still want it to come back, but, they did strike the set. There is all the things have been removed, and they've clearly kind of moved on, including some of the other cast members have kind of made their goodbyes known, But I mean, there is a chance that anything can truly come back. So if he believes it, maybe there's something to that. But it sounds more like someone who wants to still be a part of a thing that might be done. But I would love to see Swamp Thing return. Between that and Krypton, which one would you rather see come back, Brad?
I wouldn't mind seeing Krypton come back.
Yeah, it's a good show. I mean, but they both are. So personally, I know I love all the Superman stuff, but I would actually go with Swamp Thing if I'm being honest, because Swamp Thing introduced some really good stuff that I don't want to go into too many details for people who haven't seen it, but the introductions into the dark universe are what I was not expecting. I thought it was only gonna be like one or two things, but they really start to pepper it in, and they were on the cusp of making basically Justice League dark by the time you get to the end of it. And I'm just like, how did you not push for this to be another season? But I digress. Anywho, so we're moving on from number 3 to our number 2, which is kind of more DC animated and DC comic book here. So if you are on the DC universe, there is Batman Hush, which I think we've talked about in the last couple episodes. You can now watch it on the universe for free. So go ahead and check it out there. I watched it. They take some liberties, not going to lie. But I think it makes me happy for my personal sensibilities, but fans who are purists of the story as it is in the comics might not be as happy. And I've seen some interesting kind of mixed reviews. Some people really love the decision that they made. Other people didn't. It's not as bad as when they had Batgirl basically have sex with Batman in the Killing Joke animated version. But it was surprising to see the reveal that they did at the end. I would recommend it just if you like the original story and want to see what they did differently. For someone like myself who had kind of forgotten the original story a little bit, it was a surprise, but in a good way. So, yeah, go check it out. I think it's worth it. Yeah. And Brad, I think that's one of the animated ones that I think is definitely worth a watch.
Okay.
Let's go into comics. There is one thing that I had to bring up here. We don't usually talk about a lot of DC comics, but one in particular is interesting to me. So I think I've talked to you about the dark heroes that are existing over in the comics right now. They all come off of that Dark Knight's Metal run that Scott Snyder and I think Greg Capullo did over there. All that stuff. So we know that there's all sorts of like evil Batmen that exist in the comic book universe now. And actually this last week, I finally got a life-size, well, not a life-size, but a statue-sized Dawnbreaker, which is basically the evil Green Lantern Batman. And he looks so good. I wish I could show you guys it. It's right here on the studio desk. But as much as I like that, they're taking that concept, as popular as it's been, and going one step further. They're going to add 6 more DC heroes, giving them the nightmare or quote-unquote dark treatment. One being Shazam, the other being Blue Beetle. Hawkman is getting a dark treatment, and Supergirl. They also have 2 more that they're keeping a mystery for now. My question to you, Brad, is knowing even just a little bit that you do about what's going on with all of this, do you think that kind of continuing on and just kind of going through the ranks and doing more heroes in a dark fashion is getting played out, or is it just right?
I mean, what would be sort of the stopgap? You know, what would be the line to say, you know, this is enough?
Doing the Marvel Zombies treatment where just everybody becomes one, you know? Like,
yeah.
That's why I think this is okay, because at first I was like, and we're going to talk about something in Marvel because we have a lot of Marvel comics to talk about this week at number 2 on the Marvel side. But the thing I was thinking about is with the DC heroes, it's okay to add in a few more and do it because it makes sense for the story. But if you start just going on this idea because it's popular and it's making money, then it loses some of the artistic integrity of like why the story exists in the first place. To me, if they were to continue on beyond these 6, I would start to roll my eyes at it and go, yeah, all right, you've kind of played out this idea now. But I think if they keep it to the 6, I'm okay with it. But I am getting that vibe that like the whole, let's just make something that you already know dark, a thing. It's kind of like how they mirror image everyone in Marvel movies, or they did for a while, where it was like, oh, well, we've got Tony Stark. What is his bad guy going to be? It's going to be another guy who does the exact same thing, but it's an evil version. So I don't want to see that concept be played out, but I think for what we've got right now, it's okay. But maybe I'm a little biased because I want to see what Dark Hawkman turns out to be. But other than that, yeah, I think that's enough. We'll see how it turns out. So at number 3, or I'm sorry, at the number 1, my bad. We have a lot of movie talk here, and I'm just going to kind of go through it. First of all, it sounds like Joker is going to be winning some awards. I think it's Toronto Film Festival and all that stuff. Seems like he's going to be the winner of some good awards, and Joker's getting a lot of praise from everybody. My question to you, Brad, is it sounds like Todd Phillips, the director, is trying to push for a sequel because there is apparently the right kind of content for him to do it. And it could make more money on its opening week than Aquaman, according to reports. First of all, I'm calling bullshit on the opening weekend because there's no way. Like, Aquaman made $1 billion. There's no way in hell. I don't care how good Joker is. With the money that they spent on it, the fact that it is now going to be a hard R confirmed rating, it will never make $1 billion. So, even though I want DC films to do well, I'm just being honest. There's no way this movie will make $1 billion. My question to you, though, is do you think there's a chance that it will get a sequel? And do you think it's warranted?
I think it'll make a decent amount of money. I mean, Deadpool, both of the movies pulled it off. They made about, 700 or so, I think.
Which ones?
Deadpool.
Oh, Deadpool? Yeah, it might have even made more than 700, to be honest. What could they possibly do? Are they going to move it into the normal DC can't? I don't want to hear that, especially the way that Todd Phillips was talking about how he just doesn't want to stick to canon. He just wants to make like this weird little art film that doesn't have to really do with the Joker. I mean, I appreciate that it's like separate from canon because it's such a different take, but if they start going, well, it's popular enough, maybe we should try and move it in with this new Batman, it's going to fuck things up even more, and I just don't want it. So that's how I feel. I mean, I'm curious to see from an artistic take what they do with Joker, but I don't want that to be canonized with anything. So next up, we have Ezra Miller saying that he is still the Flash and that they're still going to make the movie despite the ups and downs and all the hurdles that I'm sure he's had to deal with, let alone the movie itself. Do you still want Ezra Miller to be the Flash at this point?
Who?
You know who I'm talking about.
I mean, it's been so long since Justice League. About 2 years now? Almost.
Yeah, we're getting almost to the second year since. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the memory of what Flash was and wasn't in Justice League will probably subside by about now.
Yeah, it'll be like that kind of faded memory of like, oh yeah, he was in that, wasn't he? All right, well, let's see what this Flash is all about. I'm still cool with it. I don't know if I asked you when we brought it up before, but would you rather them go lighter or would you rather them go kind of darker with the Flash? Or I should say more grounded and real versus more comical and light. That's probably the better way to put it.
Go with something similar that Aquaman did.
Okay, so feel real but still have some levity to it?
Yeah, you're talking about a character that's not real. And you want to ground it in reality.
Right.
And like, oh yeah, he was completely struck by lightning and then all of his atoms got sped up to about 1 million times, and that's why he runs fast. It's like, no, just stick to the Speed Force and just. So
don't science it too much, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Have fun with it.
Keep it in the realm of, of fiction.
You know what? I'm totally with that. I mean, I still want to see a Mirror Master villain in the movie, but I mean, whatever they end up doing, I just want them to have fun with it, I think, at this point. Because I think that's the thing that audiences respond most to. I mean, sure, my sensibilities say, keep it more, maybe not Batman v Superman level, even though that's probably the direction I would try and steer it in. But I just want it to feel fun, and I want it to feel like a comic book come to life at the end of the day. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to take itself so seriously. And again, it's Flash too, so do what's right for the character. He's never really been one for, like, super dark and we gotta I just keep going back to, like, the Titan or Teen Titans episode where they get super serious and, like, everything matters. They're, like, crying in the rain and all that stuff. Like, it doesn't have to go that route. I mean, he does have death, tragedy. I'm trying to think of some other. I mean, obviously the loss of his mother. Like, Eobard Thawne kills almost everyone in his life at some point. So there's so much that goes on that is tragic, but there's so much levity as well. And I think if you find a way to balance it the right way, you can make a really fun and movie that still kind of hits home. Actually, probably a little bit darker and more real feeling than Shazam was. Somewhere in there, I think, is that sweet spot. But yeah, I just want to see the movie at this point. Like, if we have a world where Green Lantern is a movie, why are we not tapping into, like, Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Flash, Martian Manhunter? Like, we need to start tapping into that stuff, and I don't understand why we haven't. But that being said, we've got more movie news, and it's that the Birds of Prey are basically done shooting, except they had to do a little bit of reshoots. And Brad, you might like this. Apparently, the movie was not doing so great in terms of its action scenes. So who did they bring in? Chad Stahelski, who you might know from the John Wick movies. And he's going to direct some of the additional action scenes that they're putting into the film. Does that make you feel more hopeful or optimistic about this movie, or does that concern you about the movie?
It's great that he's now working on the movie. Although it's kind of concerning that maybe the action scenes were just really bad. Yeah. And that they would have just stuck with it had somebody said, oh, no, let's get the guy from John Wick.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's Kathy Yan who is directing it. I never took her as someone who is going to do a bunch of, guns blazing, martial arts, weapons, fight scenes and all that stuff, like at a high caliber where I was going to feel like, man, this is Huntress just going in and kicking ass. And I think bringing in someone like Chad to help kind of guide some of those scenes or up the ante or the action of it all makes sense. And I'm cool with that. This is a weird case for me because one of the people that I kind of disagree with fundamentally on a lot of things when it comes to DC on Twitter, he can't stop praising this movie like it's like God's gift to DC's fans. And I haven't seen too much that gives me like super optimism, but I am excited for Huntress to finally get her time in the spotlight, as well as, another chance for Harley Quinn to step out in a bigger way than maybe Suicide Squad did. As well as, Black Canary, even though she's actually got some treatment over the years, which I appreciate. That being said, I haven't felt like they've shown us enough about this movie that makes me go, oh my gosh, they're doing it. They're really making it work. Aside from apparently there's this one scene that we might have talked about a couple episodes back where Joker is throwing out all of Harley's clothes out of some mansion or whatever that he's staying in, and she apparently was in, and then she probably has to go out on her own to, make it. And then she probably runs into the Birds of Prey and becomes one herself in the process. But I don't know how I feel about this movie. It's in this weird space where it feels like it's, I don't know, like tonally set in what Suicide Squad did, but it's got more comedy and more levity that would lend itself to something maybe of a Shazam variety, perhaps. And I'm not really compelled because they haven't done anything on the villain side that really makes me go, oh my gosh, Ewan McGregor, he's going to kick ass as Black Mask. So far, we've seen only like this half maybe black looking mask of him out of the back of a taxi. And that's not really putting the fear of what he can do in me when I watch this. So I don't know. Like, I want this to be good, but I just feel like it's just kind of there and they haven't done enough to hype it up, but we'll see. It's still another almost a year away before we see it. So we'll finally get a trailer and maybe, kind of get the ball rolling. But I don't know what I think at this point. And maybe it's for the best that they bring in Chad, because I think they need to do something that's going to, get people excited for it. And I mean, even with Suicide Squad, they had to go ahead and hire a trailer company to get everyone excited. They throw in Bohemian Rhapsody and everyone's like, holy crap, this movie could be great. I don't know. What is your take on Birds of Prey? How do you feel about it at this point?
I mean, kind of like you said, it's just sort of there.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like, all the DC movies are sort of just kind of going in their own direction. They're telling their own secluded stories, but how does Birds of Prey even come about? We haven't seen Black Canary. I mean, other than CW, we haven't seen her anywhere.
Right.
I would assume. Let's see, who's the other Bird of Prey?
Huntress.
Other than Harley, Huntress. Yes. I mean, again, CW character. It's. I mean, yeah, sure. To DC fans, yeah, these are characters that that are pretty well known. But
right.
To everybody else, it's just okay, Harley Quinn's fighting with a bunch of other female characters to do what?
Yeah, they did that off-kilter, jazzy hip-hop beat kind of sound while they did slow introductions of each of the Birds of Prey, but they didn't say anything. They just kind of did pseudo model poses or put a bat over their shoulder, and then you see a couple shots of Ewan McGregor without the mask on. And I know that's supposed to kind of drum up really early interest when they did it, because it was Harley with the little kiss and she says, see you soon. But really the most that people have talked about this movie are kind of twofold. One, this weird rumor that was going around that Ewan McGregor's Black Mask character might be gay, and that he might have a thing with Victor Zsasz, which seems really out of left field and not something I totally understand, because I've never seen that from that character in the comics. But there's that, and then what was it? Oh, the fact that they decided to add on the end of Birds of Prey the fantabulous whatever of Harley Quinn. That little extra subtitle that they wanted to throw on there, and everyone was like, why did they do that? That's such a weird title. And then slowly people kind of came around to liking it. So I really don't know what to make of it. It feels kind of like that redheaded stepchild that came out of something that felt like it was in canon, and I don't know where this sits. It's a very weird thing. I just hope it turns out good at the end of the day. So drum roll please, Brad. I got one more bit of news. Oh, I love it. Okay. The Snyder Cut is confirmed.
Oh, well, we sort of already knew that.
No, I know. And I wanted to kind of do it in this way because kind of twofold. One, it was confirmed at Silicon Valley Comic-Con by both Jason Momoa and Ray Fisher, who I saw there. Those guys are awesome. And just being that close to them, I was like, kind of starstruck. So not only that and them confirming it, kind of there, but then they went on and kind of told the world the day after, because I think Jason left the convention, went back to Hawaii or wherever he's doing his protesting right now, met Zack Snyder and I think maybe his wife Deborah, and they were all just sitting, and there's this little video where they had Zack close his eyes. He comes around and he surprises him, gives him one of those Leica cameras or whatever that he loves so much, and just, kind of reconfirms on there, I owe everything to Zack. I wouldn't be this, $1 billion movie star that I am now to people without him. And, I owe him everything. And that was just one of those real moments that I don't care if you don't love Batman v Superman, Man of Steel, or what happened in the course of Justice League. Those guys, every time I see them around Zack, they just light up. He created, in my mind, like a real family. Like he even mentioned it in promos, like how he envisioned like Aquaman is kind of like the drunk uncle. Wonder Woman is kind of being like the matriarch of the family. Flash being kind of like that younger kid who just kind of like sees the world with open eyes. And like the way that they operate, it seemed like it was kind of a creation of Zack on purpose to be a family. And by the time it was done, I still got that vibe that they were like a family. And sometimes I get that from like the Avengers. I don't want to say that like this isn't the only case of that, but it really just hurts, especially when they don't have, Ben Affleck as a part of this universe anymore, like in an official capacity, at least, to know that like part of the team is disbanded, but whenever they see each other, they come together. And, Jason and Zach or Ezra or whoever it is, like whenever they come together, even if it's just two of them, they're just like best friends who've known each other their whole lives. And I don't know, maybe it's the DC fan in me or maybe just something I love about that material, but it chokes me up kind of every time because I'm like, oh, look at what you had. They were such a good unit together. Why did you ruin that and tear it apart? I mean, it's all whatever at this point, but, we still got Wonder Woman. We still got Aquaman. And the fact that the Snyder Cut is something that truly exists now, and now it's being made more public because it's making more waves and more news articles and this and that. At some point, do you think we're going to see it?
Oof.
Because it hasn't died. Despite all the people who were like, man, I'm telling you, in like 3 months, no one's going to be talking about it. Once Justice League goes to DVD, they'll never talk about it again. 6 months later, they're talking about it. 9 months later, a year. Like I don't want to be this champion for like release the Snyder Cut, even though I do want to see it. But like it clearly has not died. Despite everyone's thoughts that it was just going to go away, it's just not. So
honestly, the ball is in Warner Brothers court.
Exactly.
There's no way it's going to see the light of day unless they decide finally 5 years from, Justice League coming out. Oh yeah, we're going to finally show you the Snyder Cut. I don't know. I just kind of think I think it will never see the light of day. Because I'm thinking it's going to show some pretty bad incompetence on Warner Brothers' part.
True. I understand the argument to be made that, like, if you throw it up now, does that alter people's perception of the current universe as it stands? I mean, yeah, but at the same time, Ben Affleck is just not around anymore, so you might as well just put it out there anyways, because you have, like, I would actually rather do it now before you get to Robert Pattinson. Once that movie drops, that's when it's really going to start to fuck up things. Right now, you're still in the kind of, like, aftermath of Snyder. I would rather do it now than 10 years down the road when we might be in the second sequel of whatever Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson are putting together. I mean, unless he gets rebooted again. That's more of a Spider-Man dig, but I just don't know why you wouldn't take advantage of a thing while it's nice and hot right now and just put it out there. Because here, what we found out at Silicon Valley Comic-Con is that, much like we had kind of described before, it's not a complete cut. Like, it doesn't have all of the post work and all that stuff, but Jason hinted there at the convention that Zach has been working on it in private and kind of growing and developing it. So I think he's doing that while he's working on Army of the Dead. If he decided to go in there and touch up a few more things and make it like a really workable cut, because what he gave to the executives when he first showed it to them was something that could be presented at least to, I would say, fans of the product and not be completely dismissed. But I think some more discerning types would go, oh, well, the special effects aren't done here or there. Kind of like when I would get screeners for Doom Patrol, for example. There'd be a swirling vortex of something, and then they'd be like, effects not finished or whatever. I think it would be kind of like that, where most of it's there, and you can see what he had in mind, but maybe a shot or two are kind of like missing the special effects. And at that point, like, if that's what they've got, just give it to us. Like, don't waste any more money. Maybe market it a little bit. Just put it out there, kind of like they did with the Donner cut for Superman. But don't spend all this time and effort. It already has its own campaign of people who are interested in it, like people who were donating thousands of dollars towards charities in the name of Zack Snyder for this thing. Just put it out there. Just get it done with. But then again, maybe this is Warner Bros. Being smart and playing like super long game with it. They're like, well, if we keep this thing going and this whole Snyder Cut thing is a trending topic, maybe down the road, we'll finally release it when it starts to die up. But right now, this is the best publicity we could possibly get. So maybe they just keep it going because it draws interest to the product. I don't know. I want to see it. And the fact that they're like more and more confirming it, like from the people who actually made it, it's a shame, I think, to me at the end of the day. Like whether it comes out or it comes out later, I don't even know or care at this point. I just want to see what they had in mind. So, yeah, you kind of you don't care at this point, or you think it's a bad idea?
I think it'd be a bad idea for Warner Brothers to release it.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in just seeing just how different it would be, but
right.
I don't think we'll ever see it still.
Yeah, they've moved on, and that's that. So, all right, that's fair enough. So next up, Marvel or Miscellaneous?
Let's do Marvel. I hear it's a pretty easy slate.
Yeah. There is a lot of content. It's just not really on the movies this week. So we were talking, I think, very early on about Jeff Loeb and how he is integrated on the TV side of Marvel. And that's where we come in with our number 3 talk this week. So at the number 3, Jeff Loeb is teasing that our Ghost Rider and Hellstrom series, which are going to Hulu, are going to be referred to as Adventures into Fear. Do you like this title? Do you think this is a good way for Marvel to be taking their television properties?
Well, if they actually do Ghost Rider, right, I would be happy.
Ghost Rider is definitely happening. Hellstrom, I'm still a little worried about.
Doing the character at least some form of justice. Okay,
did you and I talk about this before? Because I mentioned it's Robbie Reyes, and it's the one from the TV series. And I think that's the answer I got from you last time too. Yeah. So, but from what I've heard though, when they tap into more of this dark side, there's a possibility that this will open up the other Ghost Riders. Kind of the. I'm trying to think of all their names right now, but like the old Western cowboy ones and some of the.
Maybe Johnny Blaze will be ruling hell or something. I don't know.
Yeah, if Johnny Blaze. Brought in, actually no, Johnny Blaze is brought in on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Actually, they don't show him the actor, but they show that there is a Johnny Blaze that exists in that universe, so I could totally see them bringing in him. I'm just wondering how much of the I don't know what you want to call it, the Ghost Rider verse that they could really tap into.
They'll probably just keep all the focus on Robbie Reyes.
Because I will tell you... Oh, go ahead.
Robbie Reyes is... I don't know. Robbie Reyes is kind of...
He's okay. I like him. What I was surprised to hear when I think when I posted this up or the last time we talked about this, a good number of people really want to see Danny Ketch come back. Do you like any of the Danny Ketch run?
Oh gosh, I'd have to look back through my comics that I have.
I think if I recall correctly, he was kind of like the more extreme Ghost Rider, kind of like when they brought in for Green Lantern.
Gotcha. What? Do you know which decade he did?
He's been kind of on and off, but if I remember, Danny Ketch had a run that. Man, it was the 90s. He was the 1990s series. I think they just wanted to kind of reinvent the character. And that's why I said the Green Lantern thing, because that's when they kind of killed off Hal Jordan. And then they bring in the younger one, and then they kind of go off in that direction. But he's younger, he's edgier, he's cooler. Actually, the first issue, I think, was in 1990. And then they referred to it as A Spirit Reborn. So, Danny Ketch was okay. I know a lot of people liked his look and his vibe. And I think actually there was something, it was like all new Ghost Rider Legend or something like that came out maybe in 2014 or something like that, where I think he teams up with Reyes. So I don't know. I want to see more of the Ghost Rider characters, because actually one of my favorite characters in Marvel Future Fight, the mobile game that I play pretty regularly, he is in there. I think, yeah, Reyes is in there, and then they've got like the old Western one, and then they've got Ghost Panther, which is like that hybrid mashup or whatever of Ghost Rider and Black Panther. And he has like this demon panther that attacks people. It's a little crazy, but it's my kind of crazy, because I love when they do weird stuff with Ghost Rider. So do you want to see them tap into that, or do you want to have more single, straightforward adventures, kind of like what they were trying to do with the movies before they brought it to television?
Yeah, and plus I would just want them to just flesh out Reyes a bit more.
Okay.
Not like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. gave him any justice or not. But.
Yeah, he was just kind of that X factor that they used when they needed him.
Yeah.
I think they brought him in, honest to God, because they didn't have access to someone mystical like Doctor Strange. So he literally has one scene where he opens up a portal by whirling one of his chains around, and it was the same kind of effect that Doctor Strange used, and it was cool, but it also upset me. I was like, I know what you were trying to do here. Don't lie to us. It's bullshit.
It's devil power.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was a whole thing with like it was a Book of the Damned or whatever that they were trying to recover or whatever, and he was interwoven with all of it. But I was just still kind of like, come on, you know what you're doing here. As for Hellstrom, any thoughts on that series? Do you want to see it, or are you just waiting to see how Ghost Rider turns out?
I'm just interested in Ghost Rider.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting into Hellstrom after playing the game I mentioned earlier, Future Fight, which I actually, side note, they made some grammatical errors on their last update, and I actually shot a message to them, and they thanked me on the side, because, like, how do you not spell Johnny Storm correctly?
Oh, no.
Yeah, and when they did Human Torch, they put Human Touch, which I got a real kick out of that one. But yeah, I digress. I just had to rib them about that one. I was like, come on, how do you get your game wrong? But also in line with the Jeff Loeb, Adventures into Fear news, it sounds like they're trying to pursue more of the Marvel Knights branding, which most fans will know were part of the films that kind of existed outside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think the Punisher movies were doing that for a while, and I want to say one other piece of content that I can't remember. But that was kind of its own darker street level movie brand. Now it sounds like they're going to take it towards the TV level, which means we could get a reemergence of Daredevil or Punisher. They could do Moon Knight. Do you want to see Marvel Television touch these characters?
Yes.
Really? I was expecting you to say no. All right. And why?
I don't mind it on the TV front. It's a better way to get a little bit more personal with the character rather than, having a movie and then that's it for about 2 hours or so. That's
true. But if they made it closer to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and less of the Netflix properties, would that make you more upset about it than having nothing at all?
Yeah, if they do it in any respectable way as close to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I would be very, very much disappointed.
Yeah, I kind of imagined that's what you were going to say. So when you said that, I was like, really? I wasn't expecting that one from you. Okay. But yeah, I don't know what the Marvel Knights thing really will mean in the end. It could just be them, trying to use their platform to hype up something that may never happen, or just to garner interest and see how, the world reacts to it. But I don't see that happening. And if it does, it won't happen for like another 3 to 4 years, if that. They really need to get through this whole Fox Disney deal. Disney Plus needs to become a thing, and they kind of need to settle their places or their pieces down on the board, because right now it just feels like, they got stuff on Freeform, they got stuff on Hulu, things are moving around. There's nothing on Netflix. So I think they just need to focus what they have in the places they have them and then go, okay, well, this is working. Let's build here. Which is kind of what I hope that Disney Plus kind of does for them. Cause You know, if they're going to extend their cinematic universe to the TV content and continue to grow there, cool. I'm all for that. Make a Loki series, make a Hawkeye series or whatever they're going to do. Just do it right. Don't just do it because you have access to characters. Next up is more TV talk, and it is that Phil Lord and Miller, they are working on a Spider-Verse TV series. Now, this might be a little bit older news, but I don't think we've mentioned it yet. So I wanted to bring this up to you, Brad. Would you like to see Spider-Man kind of continue on that kind of movie universe that they already introduced to us on a TV level?
Is this animated property run by Marvel or by Sony?
It would be part of Sony's animated content.
Well, it seems that animated Spider-Man is the only thing they know how to do well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they can do great things. It's just, there's a lot of weird mismanagement at the top. Now, I don't know any of them personally, obviously, like Rothman or Amy Pascal or any of them, but like I've had conversations with them, and they have a great team that's working hard to make these things as best as they can be. But then, you know, you get some people who just want to make money or see their own one-sided perspective, like an Avi Arad, who, well, we'll be talking about him in the big talk for sure, because I have my thoughts there. That's my biggest fear, is one person's one-dimensional perspective that's very money driven. Now, you can make the argument that any of these things are for that reason, but if they can do what they did with the Spider-Man series of old, you know, they had like Spectacular Spider-Man, or everyone loved the 90s cartoon. There's been a lot of great animated Spider-Man content, and if it's in the hands of Phil Lord and Miller, I really want to see what they do with it, because they have made some of the best content. They did stuff for Fox, like Last Man on Earth, which was one of my favorite shows of almost 2 years ago now. The stuff that they put out is always quality, and hell, the fans, even for Star Wars, wanted to see what that Solo movie would have been under their direction too. So if they have their passion behind doing it on television, I'm cool with it. I'm just kind of surprised that they go from this theatrical film version that they have and want to do it on a TV level now. I mean, unless it's going to have like Netflix brand quality to it and they do like 8 episodes, I'm wondering if the quality will dip, and that's my only real concern here. Do you have the same fears, or do you think that it should just stay in the movies?
Yeah.
Just keep it to the
I'm
movies?
with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. You know, there's going to be a lot of Spidey shakeups, and we'll talk about that later. So let's move into some comics at number 2 here. Surprising news from Marvel. There's a lot of interesting comics coming our way. So I think to start off here, the first one that was interesting to me, I think recently, maybe as far back as maybe just 2 episodes ago, we talked about there being a Mary Jane comic book. Well, guess who's getting a comic book now?
Who?
Someone who's going to marry Peter Parker. Just take a hint.
I'm gonna go with. Oh gosh, what's her name? I'm thinking. Felicia Hardy.
Yep, Black Cat is getting her own, and it's going to be her marrying Peter Parker. So, do you want to see this happen? Do you think it's a good idea? What are your thoughts on them together?
They've always had somewhat of a complicated relationship in the comics.
Yeah, I think if you go as far back as one of the what ifs, and by the way, thank you guys for the downloads on our what if episode. This is one we should have brought up, which is, I think it's what if 21, that was back in the 90s. There was an issue where Spider-Man married Black Cat, but the problem is that was just a what if. They never really stuck to that idea. And as someone who always liked that character, I always kind of wanted to see them together because they were the Batman and Catwoman of their respective universe. So I'm excited for this, to be honest. I'm just surprised that it came up now of all, and it's in Black Cat Annual #1 of all things.
True.
So to use a popular phrase now, do you ship this? Are you about this relationship?
I just want good Spider-Man stories. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not pun intended, I'm not entangled in his relationship statuses.
That's true. That's a good point. I think it has the potential to create good stories where maybe the two of them are teaming up and that sort of thing. Because when Batman and Catwoman got together the way that they did, I don't want to spoil the rest of that, but basically some of the stories that came out of it made both of them on an individual level more interesting too. And I'll kind of leave it at that. But I think the same could be said about Spider-Man and Felicia Hardy as it progresses from this, whatever they do, because even some of the people in Twitter today were saying, oh, that they're just going to, pull like I think it was One More Day or wherever, where Mephisto comes in and just gives an option where he can opt out of the marriage, and then he does, or he just decides to go in the other direction, and they end that real quick like they shouldn't do. But yeah, I mean, it could be as brief as 2 issues and then it's all over. I'm just curious to see what they do with it, but there's more comics, so let's get into those. In X-Men, the new run that they're doing right now, guess who is now going to be leading the team?
Who?
Apocalypse.
Ah.
Do you think that this is a good idea for them to be pursuing?
I don't think it's a bad one. It's definitely an interesting choice.
I mean, based on the story that's there, and I don't want to go through all that because it would just take forever, but what they're putting together there is very intriguing, and, I think we've seen the what if Magneto would do it, what if Wolverine or Professor Xavier or whatever, kind of the traditional people you'd expect to kind of take the reins when someone steps out of the picture. Apocalypse is a very interesting choice. So I will just say once again that I am intrigued by this concept. I don't think it's something that should last for a long time, but I think it would be good for maybe 6 to 8 issue run, and then maybe someone steps in or some event happens and it goes back to status quo. But for one of those kind of like, we're going to shake things up for a bit kind of moments, I think this is kind of cool, actually. You too?
Agree.
Yeah. And then next up, you know how we were talking about all those dark characters over on DC? It looks like Marvel's taking the same page out of DC's book here. And now I'm not saying it 100% is, but it seems very spot on with what's been going on as of late. And why I said I think the dark thing is getting a little played out now. Captain Marvel is getting the dark treatment. I think the suit that they're giving her is kind of cool. It's kind of just solid red and black. And then in one of the scenes, and you can see this up on our Twitter, she's got like this red star face mask. I don't know how else to describe it. It almost looks like the Nova Corps star, but it's in red and it's over her face.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, it's that black and red look with kind of the sash combo that she has that kind of hangs to her side. So it's a cool, edgier look. Going back to what I just said, I don't want to go full on with the whole DC thing again, but I just don't want to see this concept be played out, because it's cool to have a dark character. Like, it's always good to have a yin to a yang, but if everyone's a yin to a yang, then that concept is played out so much that it doesn't feel special and unique anymore. What do you think about this? Would you like to see Captain Marvel go in a dark direction like this?
Yes, it would probably make her character a little bit more interesting.
I'll get you like Captain Marvel one of these days. No, it's fine. Do you think more Marvel characters should pursue this sort of direction?
I mean, I think it'd be interesting, but at the same time, like, you said, like, this whole dark concept is getting a little overplayed, so...
Yeah. And this is one that just dropped, I think, in the last day or two. And this is that Doc Justice and the J-Team are coming to Marvel. Before I tell you who it really is, what do you think of hearing that name? When you hear that Doc Justice and the J-Team are on their way, what does that make you think of immediately?
It makes me think of an 80s cartoon.
Okay. Who do you think it is from Marvel?
What is it? Doc Justice and...
The J-Team. And no, this is not anything to do with anime, I promise.
what is this? Is it like a...
At first, I had to do a double take because I thought they said Doc Samson. That would be a cool callback to a character I haven't seen a lot of.
Justice.
So
I'm trying to...
I'll just tell you. So Marvel Comics confirmed that the new team is basically the members of the Runaways being branded as full-on superheroes. And they just started mapping it out back in Runaways 25 through 30, those issues. And they were trying to take a classic superhero comic idea and then subvert it, but do it with like a Runaways spin to it. I think it was Nick Lowe from Marvel.com or who told Marvel.com that. So they're trying to basically take the Brian K. Vaughan run and then kind of give it a little bit more of a traditional superhero vibe. I can see a lot of people having issue with this because one of the special things about Runaways is that they were non-traditional superheroes. But would you like to see some of those characters get more of a heroic spotlight put on them? Or do you like them being kind of perpetually in that Runaways, heroes but not heroes kind of realm that they existed in for so long?
It's sort of reminiscent of the first couple seasons of The Walking Dead, where they're always on the run. Where second season they finally have some sort of place to lay down and sort of, I guess, build a pseudo community.
Yeah.
And then they get, on the run again. I'm wondering if the Runaways does something similar to that, where they get this sort of comfortable period where they kind of act normal for once.
Yeah, they finally grow up a little bit and they're like, you know what? Mm-hmm. Let's just be real heroes now. We don't have to run anymore. I'm kind of with you. That was a weird thing to kind of tether it, but I get what you're saying and that it kind of does make sense. So yeah, whatever happens with Doc Justice and the J-Team, which I think is a really weird name. I'm curious to see what they end up doing with it because I still feel like they're probably going to keep them in that like teenager level, even though they're growing up a little bit, but they're probably going to have like teenage conversations and make teenage level mistakes and still be kind of, I don't want to say new to it, but trying to figure out what it's like to be a real hero. And that could be very interesting of a story to tell. Even though I feel like the Young Avengers or New Avengers or whatever kind of young hero team that they've already put together has probably already delved into that, but maybe they've got something planned that we haven't seen before. So I'll give it the benefit of the doubt for now. I just think that's a weird name. All right. And then at number 1, the last thing to talk about is Marvel movies. And unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot. So the news is that Martin Freeman, who we know from Black Panther, it will be returning for the sequel. Does this surprise you? Are you ready to hear anything from Black Panther, as I'm sure it's going to start moving into production down the road here soon?
Well, a couple of the ideas that were roaming around the second Black Panther movie are kind of quelled now since a certain somebody isn't in the MCU anymore.
Yep, we'll be talking about that. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And actually, I should have put this in with our rumor mill, but I've heard it on good authority that actually, I think it's tomorrow or sometime over this weekend, D23 is going to be going on. And I've been told that they intentionally held off on Captain Marvel 2, Black Panther 2, and some, kind of question mark ones that they haven't revealed yet. I'm guessing Ant-Man 3 will probably be dropped in there somewhere, or whatever they're going to make the next Ant-Man film into. I think the reason that they didn't mention some of these were because they were still kind of pending off on the side. So Comic-Con, they had what they had ready. They wanted to wait for D23 to be some new stuff. So it makes sense, especially now with what we know about Spider-Man. They were probably getting to last second details because they probably were going to go like, oh, Spider-Man 3, here you go. And well, probably not at this point. So that being the case, it makes sense that they would probably focus their attention on some of their other sequels that they have instead of Spider-Man. But it is good to know that Martin Freeman will be back. And I think that perfectly ties into why we haven't heard much about Black Panther 2, other than the rumor that Namor is going to be in it, which, I mean, I'm totally down for it if it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to see? Because I guess this makes for a little bit bigger of a conversation than having Martin Freeman back for Black Panther 2. What out of D23 do you want to see Marvel tell the world is coming that will make you just lose your mind? And don't say Ghost Rider.
No, I know that's not coming. Honestly, it would be Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Okay, there's another good one. Didn't even come to my mind right off the bat there. Yeah, because we know Thor's coming. I still thought it would have been cool if, we had as Guardians of the Galaxy, but with what they're doing, I want to see what Guardians 3 is going to turn out to be. Even if it's like the far off last one before we get on to Phase 5, I want to see what they do. So, yes, I'm totally with you. If I had to choose one, I want to see some sort of like team up thing, because I think that's the one thing that's missing out of this phase is that feeling that there's no... I don't want Avengers per se, but I want a group of
like
four people... people to come together. Well, we got the duo like with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, where it's going to be him and yeah. So I think for me it would be a group of at least 4 people coming together. I don't know, maybe one could have rocks for skin, another one could have like flames for a body, someone could stretch, and then another one could be invisible, something like that. I don't know. They'd have to have some sort of powers. But, if something like that were to happen at the end of Phase 4, I think I would just lose my mind, and that would be great. But that being said, I do want to just mention real quick, because we are in the throes of Marvel's 80th anniversary. I went out and I recently just got the new Funko Pops that they're doing, because, of course, I can't stop my addiction. And they have like one each on their shelves of the classic Human Torch, the Jim Hammond, I think was the original character's name, and then Namor as they first appeared in the original issues. And I got both of them now, and they're sitting here in the office, and I absolutely love them. And I just wanted to say that really quick. And I guess happy 80 years to Marvel. So let's move on to Miscellaneous. Brad, we have 5 here, unlike our traditional 3, just because there was so damn much. So let's get into it and get through it real quick here. At number 5, I cannot believe this. We have so many good bits of news that I didn't know how else to do this, so I had to put in at 5. We have Matrix 4 happening. I can't even believe it. After all these years, they're making another Matrix movie. Are you ready for Carrie-Anne Moss and Keanu Reeves to return?
I am sort of conflicted.
Okay, I had a feeling this might happen. Continue.
Because I have no idea what it's going to be about. Is it just going to be like, oh, Neo gets reincarnated and then he does something different this time? Or is it Neo wakes up and it was all just a dream? Like what the hell is going to happen?
Well, all right. The movie's come and gone forever ago now. I don't think I'm really spoiling it, but the way that they basically end 3, he kind of fucks up and they don't get to save the universe, which I think was a very unexpected ending that no one expected out of that universe. So if they do it, I want them to kind of come in and like there's this older Keanu and this older Carrie-Anne Moss as Trinity, and then you just go in and have them, whether it's a new Keanu or whatever, or they, for people who know about the history of the Matrix, they bring in Will Smith or something like that. But they do something where, someone new comes into the picture and they try and go back and, I don't want to say repeat the steps, but they go through and guide everything in the right direction, as opposed to like they learn from the mistakes of the first events, and then they go back in, the system gets rebooted, and here's their second chance to go in there and really take them down, and they don't make the mistakes that they did the last time. But along the way, they get interrupted by new threats that kind of come in and alter the course of events as they know them to be. That's what I would love to see them do, because it would feel like a reboot where it's like, oh, we already know what's coming. Oh shit, didn't see that coming. And then, they continue the story onwards from there. And maybe they do end up saving the day at the end and, the humans win in the end, or maybe the machines still win. And maybe that's like a a darker tale that they're trying to tell about, the machines taking over and how it's unavoidable and that sort of thing.
Well, Revolutions ends with like the kind of the normal truce, because Neo dies in the end. The robots leave all the humans to live as they stand right now at the end of 3.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Well, I guess maybe I do remember it a little differently. So,
I think you do.
Because everyone that I've ever talked to remembers it as basically the robots won that one. I mean, yeah, I guess it was more of a truce, but I don't know. You got the vibe that like everything ended peacefully.
Basically, Neo completed what he needed to do. He didn't fail. He got rid of Agent Smith. That was the anomaly they were trying to get rid of.
Yeah, but they still live in like this weird world where like the robots are basically sentient creatures. I don't necessarily consider that a win. I guess, yeah, more of like an even playing field, but like, I don't know. I guess maybe that's a good point, but I don't know. I saw it differently. Maybe I've seen too many movies where like Terminator or whatever, where like machines, just the fact that they exist the way that they do, as long as they're sentient, they're still a problem. So maybe I don't know. Maybe that's just the way I saw it. But either way, it sounded like the system can, from what I remember, they said in the movie that the system will continue to reboot. We've done this for millennia or whatever. Like, you're not the first one to do this. So I actually thought that the system would inevitably reboot, and then they would have to kind of go through kind of the same things again. I mean, how would you go with a fourth Matrix if you could do it?
Oh boy. I don't know, to be perfectly honest.
That's fine.
I don't know.
I mean, Lana, who was a part of the Wachowskis, she's got a great idea for it, and I want to see what they do. Frankly, the thing that, even if they rebooted it completely, and I'm not saying they should or whatever, the thing that I would be the most excited about is that there wouldn't be the rubber putty looking special effects where Keanu's walking on the faces of a bunch of other rubber looking creatures because CGI wasn't as good at that time. If they came in with like completely updated visuals and a storyline that didn't feel so withdrawn from the first movie, like something that still felt like it could happen, maybe not so fantastical, because I know a lot of people have more problems with the films as they progress on, and I totally get that. I just want to see them bring life to that world again so that people don't look back on it with kind of like a, I don't want to say spiteful way, but just they could have done it better if they had just done XYZ. Like, I want them to give it life again. So whatever they end up doing, obviously we'll be talking more about it. This is like brand new news, so we just wanted to bring it to you guys and see what you think, and let us know what would you like to see for a fourth Matrix movie. All right, at the number 4 here, we have Masters of the Universe is now returning after all these years and numerous campaigns, including the fact like they did like the Toys That Made Us on Netflix. She-Ra got her own cartoon, which, it's more for kids and all that stuff, but there is life in that universe, and we're hearing, that Noah Centineo, who's, kind of everyone's heartthrob right now that the kids really love. He's going to be our new He-Man down the road for a live-action movie. But now we've got Kevin Smith bringing back the old cartoon and that canon to life on Netflix as Masters of the Universe Revelation. Do you want to see this cartoon? I'm super excited about it. I don't know about you.
I'd be interested in checking it out.
I mean, okay, so here's the thing. I had enough conversations with people as soon as this news dropped because obviously our feed blew up and everyone had an opinion on this. So some people are very divided because they don't want to see the original series brought to the present day. And I kind of see that because when I went back and I watched, I was like, man, this is really like, I want to say like blocky animation and kind of stuttered animation style, the way that they move and, converse with each other. So I can understand why people would want to try and distance themselves from it and just start fresh. But then again, I think it was 2002, they tried a Masters of the Universe cartoon. And despite the fact that I didn't hear anything bad about it when it came out, I don't hear anyone talking about it anymore. And I think it was because it just kind of came and went. Granted, there was a lot of great cartoons in 2002, and it probably kind of got lost in the shuffle. But I guess my question to you is, if you had to make a Masters, or had the option to make a Masters of the Universe cartoon, how would you do it? Like, would you keep with continuity? Would you go in a specific direction? What would you do?
Just update the animation style, and honestly, it's been so long, you could probably start, from scratch, storyline-wise.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you on that, just because of the fact that, like, those who are loyalists and purists about the canon, we're talking almost 40 years ago that they had their show. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm glad that there's still that level of fan base. Like, if we didn't have anything Batman or Superman for 40 years, if you had fans that were still interested in the product, that's great. But I think you need to make that content still palatable for someone who is in the now, who's never heard of this thing and it's being introduced to them for the first time. That's why, despite all of the, social progress haters and all that stuff who shit all over She-Ra and said it should be He-Man before She-Ra and all that stuff, like, I was cool with them making the She-Ra show, because I was like, yeah, it's clearly designated for younger girls who've never heard of this character before. It gives them a strong female badass that they can kind of relate to, and I totally get this. This makes sense. Why not do it? And on the He-Man side, like, I'm sure there's a bunch of young kids who would grow up loving that character if they just got introduced to it in the right way. I think it'll probably be more of like the teenager and beyond set, especially if they're continuing on from the original, but I think it'll be great. I can't wait to see it, especially if it's being guided by Kevin Smith of all people. And he's like geek fanboy number one. He's going to make sure that it turns out great. I mean, as long as it doesn't turn into like the View Askew universe, I think we'll be. I don't need to see like He-Man token up with Skeletor in Castle Grayskull over a Doobie or whatever.
I highly doubt that'll happen.
Yeah. As long as it doesn't go that route, I think we're going to be fine. I mean, look at what he did with like episodes of Supergirl and The Flash. He can be a very competent director. If you let him do his own personal touches, he might go in more like the Tusk and the weird Canada stuff that he was doing in his movies, but I think he'll do a very competent show, and I can't wait to see what he does for Netflix. Next up at number 3 is a lot of trailer talk here, so I'll just kind of run through it. Brad, we had to start off here the trailer for Bombshell. Now, we don't really get into politics, but we went and saw Ready or Not just the other day, and it was actually a really good movie, like I mentioned at the top of the show. And then this trailer drops for something I didn't even know was a thing. It's about Roger Ailes and all of his stuff at Fox News. And, while I don't want to get into all the details of that stuff, what do you think about this trailer? Kind of playing up on very, I would say within the last couple of years kind of events, and trying to make kind of like a political conversation movie. Do you think this could hit home with a lot of people?
It's called Capitalizing on Controversy.
Oh, of course. I mean, they did it with all sorts of other movies that, whether it was, I'm trying to remember the one about the newspaper, and, there's always someone who has a gossip or a secret or something that they tell, and it cracks the case open on whatever. And I'm cool with those movies. Like, they obviously have an intended audience, whatever they're playing to, whether it's left, right, or somewhere in the middle, and that's great. Whatever your message is, play to your audience. Cool. I will say my favorite thing about this entire trailer is it has Charlize Theron, it has Nicole Kidman, and it has Margot Robbie. When I watched the trailer, I watched it 2 or 3 times, and I really had to analyze, because Charlize Theron, I think, is playing like Megyn Kelly or whatever in this. Mm-hmm. And I did not see Charlize Theron. Like, I looked at her like 2 or 3 times, and I'm just like, you're kidding me. That cannot be Charlize, because it did not look like her. And then I kind of like, when she turned her head just a little bit, I was like, okay. But the way that they did her up, either that's some good makeup work, or she looks more like Megyn Kelly than I ever thought. Because, I mean, she looks like she's going to become that person.
That's just masterful work in the makeup chair.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. Like, I don't put all the political stuff to the side, I think the fact that they're like becoming those ladies and doing it in what feels like a very real kind of way, I think that has my attention on this project more than anything. And that's why I kind of brought it up on here. And kudos to Charlize Theron, still making kick-ass movies. Next up is the fact that we have a new trailer that Warner Brothers just sent us directly today. It's called Motherless in Brooklyn, and it's being directed and starring Edward Norton. What do you think about this trailer, Brad?
It looks interesting. Sort of the whole character has a tick kind of thing, and it somehow makes him a good detective.
Yeah, he's got a little offbeat quirk. He, maybe some level of special disability of some sort. But he's guided by Bruce Willis's character into a way that he uses it in a way that makes him an asset. And then he kind of helps, at least from the way the trailer looks, because, it's in the trailer. Bruce Willis seems like he dies. But at that point, he seems more self-assured. So maybe we see kind of early on how he deals with his condition and how he kind of overcomes it. But then by the end of, or at least maybe the middle of the movie, we see him kind of self-assured and trying to figure out how to crack this case that Bruce Willis's character, his mentor, wasn't able to. So I think it's a really interesting concept. And, obviously roles of tackling someone of a disability or of some sort of special characteristic about them usually tend to play well for Oscar fare and, that sort of thing. I think this has the potential to not only hit a mainstream audience for, kind of the crime mystery side of it, but at the same time also bring in a solid performance for Edward Norton. And I was telling people in our chat and you before we got on here, I think honestly this might be the most interesting movie I've seen from Edward Norton since maybe The Illusionist. I don't know. What's the last Edward Norton movie that got you really excited?
Oh gosh. I gotta think a little bit here.
Moonrise Kingdom?
Oh no.
I know, I'm just kidding.
The last movie he was in that was really good. Oh my gosh, I can't remember.
I'll tell you, so many people told me that it was Incredible Hulk, and I was like, I can't. Like, I like a lot of Marvel movies, and I appreciate that was in the time when Universal had some control, and they were trying to make it darker, but I can't do Football Player Hulk. I can't with that movie. My favorite thing about that was the score, those heightened violins for the added, intensity of the moment, and Emil Blonsky's story as he becomes Abomination, even if he's not really Abomination from the comics by the end of it. That was such a good performance that I was actually kind of rooting for him. I was like, oh yeah, you go Blonsky, kick some ass. And oh shit. All right, well, we're going to have a monster on monster fight by the end of this. And it turned out the way that it did, but that movie is definitely not one of my favorites.
The Italian Job.
Ooh, wow. That's going back, 2003?
Mm-hmm.
16 years later, he finally does something that gets you excited. Or does it? I mean, are you interested in this film?
It seems pretty good.
Yeah. We'll see how it turns out. Next one up is Underwater, the new trailer that I'm hearing a lot of people say is giving them vibes of Alien, and I kind of agree with it. What do you think about Underwater?
First half of the trailer was pretty cool, and then all of a sudden it just turns into them in underwater suits walking around underwater. That seemed to be sort of boring.
Well, I think what they're trying not to do is show you what the creature is, because again, the best part of any horror...
It's not so much as not seeing the creature. It's just that it's just darkness all around them, and then that's it.
Well, I mean, there's all the pink and whatever weird sci-fi stuff that they are walking into. I mean, I think it's just the fact that they're trying not to show us what's attacking them, because in the trailer, we see something get unearthed. We don't get to see what that thing is, but there's clearly something attacking them, and they don't know how to deal with it as it's breaching into their ship underwater. And as cool as it is that it's getting a lot of people psyched up in the Alien kind of way, there's also a movie that I found out about because one thing Amanda and I have been doing is we've been tapping into these free movies that other little apps have available, like Vudu and that sort of thing. So they've got these free movies, and I found one that has Peter Weller, who most people will know as either Buckaroo Banzai or RoboCop, and he did this movie that was very much like Alien, but it was underwater. It was called Leviathan. It's actually really good. I mean, it doesn't totally hold up special effects and all that stuff after all these years, but it's very much like if Alien was done underwater. And in anticipation of this, I almost want to go back and watch that movie again because it was really enjoyable. So I would compare it more to Leviathan than Alien, but I think it's a really good movie. And this one, I mean, it looks like the performances are solid. It's giving me that kind of claustrophobic horror that you only get in these, space away from the surface kind of adventures that, Alien and this kind of movie would provide. I think the last time I got scared about something like this was the movie Pandorum. Do you remember Pandorum? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, Pandorum, I think, was next level scary, and it had a real effed up twist to it at all. But, actually, that's a movie that should get a sequel, honestly. But I'm excited for this one. I think it could be good. Next trailer up is Rambo Last Blood trailer 2. Does this one get you more excited or less excited than the first one did?
No more than the first one did.
I'm not going to lie. I think I said it when the first one dropped. I really kind of marked out for when they did Old Town Road because I was like, I feel like that song is getting kind of played out. And every time I hear it, I still somehow find myself kind of humming it a little bit where I'm like, take my horse. Yeah. And when they didn't do it this time, I was like, oh, okay, this is a movie that they're actually kind of taking themselves seriously about. I think the first one, the use of that music in the first one was to get more people talking about it, especially on Twitter and that sort of thing. But if this truly is the last run for Rambo, I think I'm all in for it because the first one, and someone in our chat described this to me very well. The first one didn't give vibes that he was protecting. It looked almost more like he was seeking out people and trying to take them down. This new trailer looks like he's more or less defending his home and the people that want to see him dead. And I think that hits more on point with the Rambo and that character that people have come to know and love after all these years. So I think this trailer does actually do a better job of giving us true Rambo vibes. And I think it has me more excited than ever to see what this final installment's going to be. Is that where you're at too? You're kind of excited for what it's going to be, or where are you at?
I mean, it's just kind of all of Stallone's characters finally coming to an end.
Yeah. And then, I'll save it for another time, but it sounds like he might be trying to drudge up one more, which is Rocky, but we'll talk about that on another episode. Last bit is that Bond is back. We have No Time to Die is the new Daniel Craig Bond title. We know that it's coming April 8th in America next year, and then April 3rd in the UK. What do you think about this new little flash of what the title is going to be and the re-emergence of Bond?
I do like the typography they used in it.
Mr. Graphic Designer, I thought you might have some words about that.
Yeah, that was really cool. Although all of the shenanigans surrounding this movie at the moment is kind of just beyond what I'm tolerating of...
Oh, the female Bond and all this other stuff that's surrounding it? Yeah, I don't know what it is about the world we live in now. Maybe some of this is true or maybe it isn't. The fact that we can go through 3 to 5 years and never hear anything bad about any of the Marvel production movies, but everything Sony is bad. Everything Warner Brothers is apparently chaos. Anything that isn't Disney is somehow just terrible and Disney's perfect. And this is not like me trying to shit on Disney because I know that they've had problems, but for some reason, the way that it's characterized in media forums, it always sounds like these things are the worst things ever. So that by the time you get to the movie, you're not even interested in it anymore. And I know that people outside of our bubble don't necessarily get super immersed in that sort of thing, or they hear like our kind of news from us secondhand and they're like, oh, well, I'm sure it'll be fine. But for some others, you know, they take it very seriously and it becomes part of the mainstream conversation. And I just hate for that to happen to this movie because, you know, anyone can say that there was a problem on set. There was quote unquote problems on the set of Aladdin, and that movie turned out to be $1 billion movie. So I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm curious what the story is going to be. I think really at its core, that's the thing that interests me most. I don't care if there's 3 female Bonds that come out of it or 2 Blofelds or whatever you want to do. You could have a partridge in a pear tree for all I care. I just want to see it be good, you know? Like, I just think that for the last Daniel Craig movie that we get, so we've heard, he should go out with a bang, and I hope it is this movie. He deserves at least 3 good ones so that he can say, like, I was a good Bond, take it or leave it. And I hope that this is that. Okay, so let's get off the trailers and get on to the number 2 talk. And I think, Brad, you are going to be very excited about this. We're going to start with the little ones. Basically, what we're going to do is some casting announcements here. And then Brad's going to tell me the one he's most excited for, which I think I already know. So the first thing is that Henry Golding is going to be cast as Snake Eyes. You might know him from Crazy Rich Asians. He's going to be our new title character for the G.I. Joe kind of spin-offs that they're doing before they finally build to an actual G.I. Joe movie. Are you excited for Snake Eyes and Henry Golding?
Yes.
Okay. Then we have Russell Brand, who might be joining Death on the Nile, which will be the sequel to Murder on the Orient Express. Thoughts on this one?
Is he playing a serious role?
I don't know. If anything, like they could have put pretty much anyone in one of these movies, and I would have been totally fine with it because I love all those Agatha Christie novels. I think they are because I read them all when I was much younger, and I love the movie, the last one, Murder on the Orient Express. But he seems like a weird casting. I'll just say that much. So we don't know if it's a serious role or not or whatever, but Kenneth Branagh sees something in him, and I hope that it's something good. But I'm guessing, yes, it'll probably be serious. Hopefully he's not philosophizing, oh
God,
yeah, because I don't need that from him. Next up, we have Ludi Lin, who people will know from all sorts of things. Power Rangers, for one. He was recently in Black Mirror. He's making a name for himself, and apparently he's in talks for Liu Kang in the Mortal Kombat movie. Yay or nay?
Interesting. What other stuff has he been in?
You would have seen him. Oh, let's see. There's Black Mirror. There's Power Rangers. He was in Aquaman as one of one of the Royal Guards when they were in Atlantis. I can't think of the rest, but he's a young and upcoming actor. I think he's good, but I don't see Liu Kang in his demeanor, like kind of his swagger. I don't see that vibe. I think he's solid when it comes to martial arts and action scenes and things like that. So he's good in that respect. But I want someone who's a little bit more bold and brash, and I haven't really gotten that from his works, at least the ones I've seen. So I'm kind of 50-50 on this one. I would have rather them gone in kind of like the direction that they did with not Iron Fist, but Master of Karate. I can't think of his name over on the Marvel side. Shang-Chi, thank you very much. And yeah, like the actor that we got to play him, I think he would have been a better choice for like a Liu Kang. But, you know, that's the beauty of movies and movie magic, is they can make anyone seem like something that they might not seem on a first appearance. So we'll see. It sounds like they've casted like Jax and some of the other ones. Jax is very interesting to me. This one might get a side eye from you, but you know how we were talking about how we're not going to be seeing Jimmy Olsen on Supergirl anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's going to be our Jax.
Huh.
What do you think about that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. interesting. I don't. Maybe he fits that role. I mean, if they play Jax according to how he's sort of portrayed in Mortal Kombat 10 and 11, that might work.
Yeah, more of a sleeker build. I mean, then again, he could put on muscle. I like that he's got like such a build. Like he's such a tall guy. I think he could pull it off. It's just weird because I've seen him as Jimmy Olsen in kind of this CW kind of romantic light for so long. But I'm going to send you a picture right now that might give you a different look at him that might make you go, oh, okay, I could see him as Jax. But yeah, I will definitely say of all the people I expected for that role, like you could have even said Tyrese and I'd been like, oh yeah, makes sense. I was not seeing Makad Brooks for this role at first. That being said, there is one more casting that I have to mention. And I think this is going to be the one you're going to really want to talk about. And that's that Ewan McGregor has been cast as Obi-Wan once again for an Obi-Wan series that's going to be on Disney+. Are you excited for this? Yeah, right? Yes. It is about time. How would you like to see this go?
Man, I mean, from the time he's on Tatooine, I mean, what he does on Tatooine, does he like sneak off the planet and do other stuff? You know, that would be interesting to see.
Kind of like what I was saying when we were doing our, what was that, Last Jedi review? I think it was our Rogue One review.
Possibly.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, and you guys can definitely listen to my whole spiel on that one if you want to go back and listen to our episode from back then. But one of the things I was thinking is if you're going to have him exist in this world and this is going to be like the story that's kind of unknown, I would love to see him build to an event where he takes on Darth Vader, maybe on Mustafar again. Like they have another kind of epic battle or something like that. But I really want to see them kind of explore that world and then maybe even bring back Hayden Christensen because enough time will have passed. Like, I mean, I could only imagine.
What is the goat? Like a force projection of Darth Vader without a mask?
Wait, say it again?
You said bring Hayden Christensen back.
Yeah, because...
Like, what is he going to do?
He'd be Darth Vader? Like, I mean, obviously
Why?
he'd be
You're
burned.
You're not going to see his face. What's the point?
No, I'm not saying you have to do him as like a human being because obviously he'd be scarred and burned and all that stuff. But we've seen him with the burn prosthetics and everything like that under the helmet. So if they're having any sort of dialogue, obviously you probably want to use like James Earl Jones for that voice and everything. But once you lose the helmet, because I'm sure if you had them in a scuffle against each other, the most compelling moment is to have them have a face-to-face, where he actually like loses part of the mask or whatever, and he's talking as normal as he can again, or maybe some partial respirator thing, kind of like the one character Forrest Whitaker played in Rogue One, but have them have that dialogue and like have them literally see eye to eye with each other and like have that cool moment. But obviously you can see the fear and the anger in Hayden's eyes. Like, I think that would be such a cool moment. Like, even to the point where you could even break Darth Vader down to a point where it's almost like he has this revelation where he's like maybe he's about to turn back to good. And then he just fully snaps and goes full on evil and just hates him even more. And then just flies off to continue on with the rest of whatever he's going to do across the galaxy. But I just want to see what they do with this. What would you do with his story?
Man, communing with the Force, learning all the stuff from Yoda and whatnot.
You want to have him teach some young Jedis along the way?
Oh, no. I mean, he could be talking to Qui-Gon Jinn too, man.
Oh, yeah. Qui-Gon, yeah, he'd probably still be a Force ghost. Would you bring back... why can't I think of his name? Oh my gosh.
Liam Neeson.
Thank you very much. Wow, my brain is melting. Yeah.
That would be awesome if he were up to it.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, their cast from those movies is still young enough that I think that they could pull off them going, like looking a little bit older or being Force ghosts, and it wouldn't phase people. And I think there's enough nostalgia for the prequels at this point in time that you could really hit on, bringing back one or two familiar faces, even just like a weird cameo of someone like Watto or something like that. And people just, oh my gosh, he's back. Like, of all the people to get excited about. But, or is this a good way to maybe tie in some other properties? Would you have them? Well, no, actually that might be a bad move. Cause if you start going in with like, well, here's Han Solo, and apparently I met him before I met Luke. Yeah.
I would see if there's any sort of connection with like Ahsoka and whatnot.
That'd be cool. I think they do play into that, and I should get like a even deeper Star Wars expert than you on here to just talk about what happens during the Clone Wars, and because I know almost everything that happens during Rebels, but Obi-Wan really isn't much of a presence there, so. Yeah, I'm.
But you don't know. You don't know.
Exactly. It's a story we don't know, and that's what I want to hear about. I want to know the details in between, as long as it's a good story. So yeah, I think we've said enough about Obi-Wan, and when we get more details, we'll definitely present him to you guys. All right, so at the number 1, guess what we're going to be talking about this week?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just tell you. CBS and Viacom are now merging. And as a result...
that's right. Yeah.
So with CBS and Viacom merging, it's the reason that you're starting to see over on like CBS All Access, for those of you who have it, or you've seen clips of what they're doing, like they're reintroducing Spock. Now, my understanding, and this is one of those weird things of like who owns property rights and that sort of thing. The best understanding I have of this, to put it in simple terms, is like if you're watching the movies, that's very Paramount driven, and it's a lot of the classic characters you come to know and love. There's Captain Pike, and there's Spock, and the rest of the gang, like classic original series kind of characters. When it goes over to the CBS side, it has to be more like original content. Like you can have like the Enterprise, and you can have some of those things, but the characters themselves, it was tough going, to say the least, because Viacom had them, I guess, more with the Paramount side, and CBS was doing their own thing. So now, apparently, CBS and Viacom have had this merger, this agreement where they're working in tandem with each other, which, I'll be honest, as much as I do know, this still kind of blows my mind, because Paramount is its own entity, and it will have some stake in like the movies going forward, but CBS is technically under the Warner Brothers banner. And this is where I have that Austin Powers moment where my eyes go cross-eyed because I don't know what the hell's going on. But either way, they're sharing the original characters now. And I think this is great for the universe going forward. And I say universe because according to a new report, which I think came from the Hollywood Reporter or Deadline, one of the two, said that they are looking at a potential real universe. And when I say that, I mean more like kind of the Marvel universe, in the sense that they're talking about quote unquote multiple animated series, short films, and Michelle Yeoh's character from Discovery is apparently going to get a spinoff. So they're really trying to expand this content. I don't believe that most of that will happen, but I wanted to get your take. What do you think about Star Trek as it exists right now? We know there's a Tarantino movie being planned, and then all the stuff that I just mentioned. Not to mention Picard that we just saw at Comic-Con. What do you think about the state of Star Wars right now?
Do you want to repeat that?
There is a lot. So there is...
No. You said Star Wars.
Oh, did I? Oh, I meant Star Trek. My bad. We were just coming off of Star Wars, so... yes. So with Star Trek, what would you like to see? What do you think of the universe right now?
Well, first off, I think it's good that Viacom and CBS got back together.
Yeah.
I think that the content that they were making was just incomplete.
True.
You had CBS trying to do, new TV spin-off stuff that just, I guess, sort of did okay, and then just started falling off. And then you had Viacom trying to make movies from, I guess, somewhat original but not original characters.
Yeah, more Paramount, but yeah, I know what you mean.
And they just never had the following that they were hoping for, because you had the first one, and then you had Into Darkness, and then they had to get funding from a different film company to get the third one out.
That's true, yeah.
So, they never were able to garner the popularity on film with the J.J. Abrams movie, and then, consequently going forward. And then on the TV side with CBS, they just didn't really know what to do with it. I mean, I think CBS was getting all of the merchandise stuff from the original characters, and then Viacom was getting merchandise income from the original non-original characters.
Right.
It's really weird.
Okay. Yeah, so my take on Star Trek as of right now is I love the fact that they're doing Discovery. And despite the fact that as the show's gone on, I've heard more progressive complaints about it being, how do I put this, more J.J. Abrams than classic series, where it's more about like, wow, look at how cool this thing is, time travel, what? Like that sort of thing, rather than like, oh, we're having like socio-political kind of conversations with the guise of a like alien and otherworldly perspective to it to kind of make it still seem kind of fun. Instead of pew pew kind of blasters, it's like, get your mega thruster cannon and fire away kind of thing. Like it's that sort of difference is what I'm hearing. And I don't have a problem with either style per se. I think one of the things that introducing JJ's series of films into the mix created was more of a Star Wars kind of aesthetic to their universe that hadn't really existed before. Like, for all intents and purposes, and I say this with utmost respect, Star Trek is kind of supposed to be boring. And, that's kind of the magic of it is because it's more about the conversation and the interactions rather than the cool effects and laser swords and all that, the things that I think maybe drive Star Wars in the way that it goes. And for years there was conversations, even there's a great episode of the Goldbergs of all things where Adam, the main character, and his girlfriend are talking about the things that they love. And he talks about why Star Wars is amazing. And she goes, are you kidding me? Star Trek is clearly the best. And they have this whole back and forth about why, one is superior over the other. And they both make good points. But I think it's because they appreciate one aspect versus another. And if you love Star Wars, if you love Star Trek, if you love both, it's fine. But the fact that they kind of blended one world into another's in the way that they decided to put it out to the public, I think is somewhat damaging because it takes away some of the uniqueness of what made it Star Trek in the first place. But at the same time, I can't really fault them because, despite it, me using like the term boring and all that stuff, and the reason that worked for people was great, but I think being Warner Brothers or CBS or whoever you want to say is really to blame with all this, they're trying to make money, as any studio or any company would. So they're trying to find a way to make it the most, consumable for a mass audience. And these sorts of consequences are going to be a casualty of it becoming a popularized medium. And you could make the argument that, yes, Star Trek was definitely popular before, but it was popular in a niche kind of way. It's like if I was to talk ad nauseum about JSA, as if I don't already do that, to people who cannot give two shits about JSA. But if all of a sudden I was like, well, they're like Justice League, and then I start to turn them into something that they're not, you could get more people excited about it and hope that it kind of gets them to appreciate the content that came before. But it really isn't the same thing when you're making it into something else. And I totally get why that would offend some people. So if it comes down to them making animated series or spin-offs or short films and it doesn't completely respect the people, I totally understand why people are upset. I just want to see Star Trek be a fun series about space adventures, really. I don't need it to be thought-provoking, and I don't necessarily need it to be, fire all blasters 24/7, but if they can find a way to make it fun and bring back characters like Picard, like I mentioned earlier, I'm fine with it. I marked out like crazy when I saw Jean-Luc Picard interacting with the rest of the cast of Next Generation. Will it be a good show? I have no idea, but I'm excited to at least see what they give us, and hopefully they don't do what I said with those dark superheroes where they just play up nostalgia and then that's it, and then there's nothing to these series. I want it to be good. I just hope they don't play it out. Would you agree?
I do.
Okay, well then that is enough for our miscellaneous talk. Let's go to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back to talk about the future of Spider-Man. Okay, so this is an interesting one to bring up. Hot on the latest news that everyone is still buzzing about from just a day ago. We have Spider-Man leaving the MCU. Do you know all about this story, Brad, or is this kind of news to you?
I do.
So what have you heard so far?
So, Disney wanted to renegotiate the contract to keep Spider-Man in the MCU.
Correct.
And they wanted to split production costs 50-50.
Yes.
And basically, well, I've heard Sony walked out. I heard Disney walked out at one point. And then Sony put out, the first official word.
Yeah.
That Disney, it wasn't going to work with Kevin Feige. He's got too much stuff to do. And Disney is now using all of its fan outrage to basically call BS on Sony's behalf.
Yep, pretty much.
From everything else that I know of, Sony has no financial incentive to do a 50-50 split. It doesn't make any sense to them because Marvel gets all of the merchandising, has all the merchandising rights. And even if they split 50-50, Marvel's still going to come ahead by about, 7 to 8 figures.
Right,
or
exactly.
9 figures.
Oh, yeah.
And even if it might be a bargaining tactic for I wouldn't say it's a bargaining tactic for Disney. I think it's them trying to get Sony to give them a little bit more other than the 95-5 split that they originally had.
Mm-hmm.
Which I kind of hope happens because it's kind of weird that the MCU was building up Spider-Man
right
up until Far From Home, and now that we're just not going to do that. So I'm thinking this is a little bit of an unforeseen thing that Marvel didn't quite plan for.
Yep.
And they thought they could just go, let's just split it 50-50. It'll be good because your property's good because of us now.
Oh, yeah. They weren't expecting hardball. Yeah.
But you're also the only reason I think Sony is willing to just walk away completely is because of the success of Venom. Now, monetary-wise, Venom was a success. Critically, is kind of a mixed bag. The character of Venom and Eddie Brock was done, I would say, average to above average. But the rest of the movie, the rest of the movie was just kind of like a bland version of Raisin Bran.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That's good enough.
It's palatable, but there's nothing outstanding.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, it hits an audience, but it's not anything exceptional that people are going to remember years to come.
And then top it off with the fact that Tom Holland is still under contract to do one more Spider-Man movie, which means it'll be done. Well, at this point, it'll be done exclusively with Sony and the director from Far From Home as well. And then afterwards, his contract is up. So Sony is probably more worried about renewing Tom Holland's contract because who knows if Tom Holland wants to come back and play Spider-Man in a Sony Venomverse instead of with the MCU, which, to be quite frankly, that Spider-Man Tom Holland plays is not going to work in the Venomverse, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I kind of see what you mean there.
There are a whole lot of factors that you have to take in. It's like, where did Spider-Man go in the MCU? Oh, well, he just kind of flew to San Francisco to lay low and nobody's going to notice that it's Peter Parker in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Like how do you kind of tie that into Venom 2 or whatever they call it.
Right. Well, okay, so I'll unpack everything as I've come to know it. And like 90% of what you said is just totally on point. So, as Brad said, yes, there was this split between Sony and Marvel, or I'm sorry, Sony and Disney, however you want to put it, the MCU, that happened just apparently in this last week or so. And I think the one thing I want to characterize this entire thing is it's drama and publicity like I haven't seen since like the first talks of like Snyder Cut. And it's getting almost too ridiculous, and it's been like 2 days. I'm already kind of over it, and I don't mean that in like I don't care about Spider-Man, because I absolutely care about this, but I think a lot of this is kind of being drummed up in the sense of, they want to see how people have their conversations and get the conversation going about what's going on. So yes, as Brad said, there was a 50% split that they wanted as opposed to the 5 they had before, on top of the merchandise rights that Disney already had. Obviously, anyone with half a mind, with all due respect to both parties, would say no to that. I mean, come on, like, why would Sony give up like the last shred of that character right that they really had? Because if you think about it, they're giving more than 50% away when you include the merchandise rights. So they barely even have control of that character anymore. Like the thing that they said, I think it was Tom Rothman, back when they were giving control to Disney and the MCU in terms of creative rights, even if it was on a 5% scale, is that they still saw themselves as the ultimate decision makers when it came down to Spider-Man. They originally wanted that kid from Ender's Game. I can't think of his name right now. He was originally going to be Disney's choice for who Peter Parker was going to be. And Sony came in and said, no, we want Tom Holland. We think he's going to be great. We're going to be putting him in this, Uncharted movie, and we have other plans for him. Side note, Uncharted might not even happen now, because it sounds like Tom Holland.
Big surprise.
I know. Well, they lost the director, so it has not been a good week for Tom Holland. From what I've come to know, too, him, his father, and I think they said, I can't think of her name, the actress who plays MJ, Zendaya, apparently like unfollowed them on social media, them being Sony. So again, I'm telling you, drama like no one would believe on all this. So I guess we're all supposed to feed into it and think, oh, there's more going on than we see. But really, I was saying, as soon as I heard 50%, like, I don't think it's uncharacteristic or unreasonable, unaccepted, or unacceptable to give Marvel a little bit more credit, because obviously they made Spider-Man $1 billion. Like, it wasn't on Sony. No, I know that obviously the Amazing Spider-Man movies did pretty good box office, but they put so much money into it that they didn't really make a return on their investment. Whereas this Spider-Man's making $1 billion. So they're doing something right with the character. No matter how much you like the direction or not, it's working, period. So on that fact alone, Marvel/Disney deserves credit, period. And for that, they should get a boost in pay or boost in credit, however you want to look at this situation. But it shouldn't be 50%. They didn't do 50% of the work. I don't think they deserve that much. And
I think it's a little bit on Disney's part that they're just being a little greedy.
Exactly.
With that offer.
They want that character back. They want everything that it touches because they know that they can turn it into gold. And rightly so. But I am tired, nothing against Disney really, of the idea of, there are some very Disney diehards on there who are like, you can't say Disney's a monopoly, but they are monopolizing everything that they come in contact with because they're a business. At the end of the day, Disney doesn't give two shits about you, just like any of these other big companies, And, it's a hard pill to swallow, but I have to admit that too. Like, I can have nice conversations with this studio or that studio, but I know that they're really more interested in me and our product and all that stuff because, we talk them up. It's a give and a take. Like, they give us things and we talk about why we love them, but I don't try and sugarcoat it in a way that I'm not going to be dismissive when these moments present themselves. I'm going to tell you that Disney has money at heart. They don't care about, like, actually one of the stories that I wanted to bring up here is about Stan Lee's daughter. Now, side note, with Silicon Valley Comic-Con, we made a networking connection at the event, got some stuff from this one guy, and he was like, hey, I remember you from the last show I saw you at, which was, I think, San Diego Comic-Con. And he was like, if you want, and this is before this news dropped, I can get you in touch with Stan Lee's daughter. She has a lot to say about the industry and about some things that Stan was a part of. And this, like I said, was before any of the drama came up. The drama being that she sides with Sony in all this. Now, granted, I'm not really concerned of like who sides with who, but one of her statements was they treated my father terribly. Marvel didn't care whether it was Sony or I think it was Sony or Disney, because they don't really care about my father. They care about his work and what they can do with it because they want to make a profit. And, I don't know her very well. I don't know where her feelings on this were coming from, but I think one of the things she said in her quote was that they didn't even send him a card or give him a phone call on his birthday or anything like that. If they cared so much, they probably would have extended themselves a little bit more. Now, granted, I've seen some stuff where he has been hailed and applauded in various ways, but I think more or less what she was referring to is the conversations in private saying, thank you for your work. Because every time that they put him out there, it was always kind of this like, he's the face of our company, but really he had no real creative input. So it seemed more like if it was a publicity stunt to use him to help further the brand. So I can kind of understand where she's coming from when she said what she said today, but I go back to the whole concept of it being a business. And as much as it hurts, one of our kind of, I'll just say naysayers about comic book culture and everything as it's become, chimed into our chat group saying, hey man, I get that why you guys like this and all this stuff, but at the same time, we have to look at this as just it's business. They don't give two shits about us. They really don't. They just want to do what gets them money. And if we get buttered up the right way for these projects, then that's what they're going to do, and they're going to play to that hardcore. So I have to kind of agree with it because Disney does this and Marvel does this not because they necessarily want their character back in the fold. They just want to get the most money that they possibly can. And Spider-Man is that kind of character.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit unrealistic if Disney's thinking they're going to get Spider-Man back.
Yeah, I hate to be that person, especially with Disney, because I get it, and I love the idea of Spider-Man being a part of that universe. But I've said time and time again, like even with Warner Brothers, like as much as I love them and their company and all that they've done, I know that they do, some things that I disagree with. And at the same time, I wish that they'd put like Hawkman over on Universal or I don't know, Blue Beetle over on Sony so that these properties would start to get made because I want to see different artistic interpretations of them. You put Spider-Man over with the MCU and you start losing all these varieties of stories that you could get told by different studios. I think one of the things that I appreciated, despite their differences in quality, to put it simply, whether you liked maybe Amazing Spider-Man or you liked the Raimi films or however you felt about maybe the X-Men films over the years, they didn't feel like the same thing being repeated over and over again. Because I don't always need to hear things being wrapped up somehow in what Tony Stark did or how the Avengers saved the day, but also still caused an event that did something else. I actually kind of appreciate, like with what Warner Brothers is doing. Like we have a Joker movie. It may not be my favorite kind of interpretation of that character, but it's different. I can still kind of relate to it, but it keeps everything interesting and fresh. and it doesn't completely bastardize the character either. It just gives, for lack of a better word, an Elseworlds take on, what we may come to know and love. And if you don't like it, then don't see it. But at least it exists out there, and someone tried to put something artistically different out there for you to enjoy, so that you weren't just getting cookie cutter formula time and time again. And I know this sounds like I'm solely defending Sony on this one, and I'm also not. So the other part of this that I want to bring up is the thing I'm worried about with Sony. Real quick, I should say that my closing thoughts on the Disney side of it is I think this will probably end up with them agreeing up to about a 15 to 20% differential. I think it'll probably, they go high, the other guys go low, and then they somehow meet in the middle. And I think 15 is right about that sweet spot. And Marvel at least deserves that much. That being said, I'm worried about it going back to Sony. Some of what Brad said, I don't necessarily see a world where the next Spider-Man or the next Venom movie should have them facing off against each other or even teaming up. I think whatever their sequels do, it could set up for, the next time, and then they see each other at, in Venom 3 or Spider-Man 4, and then I'd be kind of okay with it. But them coming together and Venom being pushed the way that he did, or that he was, with Spider-Man being kind of out of Sony's picture for a bit there, is mostly due to Avi Arad, a guy who, I don't personally hate because I don't know him one-on-one, but the way he sees Spider-Man, that world, is what I really don't like about the Sony side of things. Everything he sees is a toy, and how he can sell something and how he can make the most money. Actually, Tom Rothman said in an interview that I read just today, it was something about like how they're going to find the best way to make the most money. And that's partly why they gave him over to Disney, because they knew that that was a formula that would work. It was clearly working for their properties, and they believed that that could get them the most bang for their buck out of the character that they have. Because again, it's all about being a business for them. So I don't know that anyone truly has these characters' best interests at heart. I like the idea that Spider-Man can exist in Sony. Maybe they can do something a little different with it. From everything I've heard, it sounds like Tom Holland has an option, not a guarantee, for his next movie. If they decide to pursue it and he's still going to go through with it, he will continue on the story that he had in the last two films, which I think is great. The proposition from Kevin Feige, and it was something we talked about in our reacts for it, was that he was going to have Peter kind of come into his own, that he wouldn't need Tony Stark anyways. So it actually kind of makes sense that in Spider-Man 3, he wouldn't have to mention any of the Avengers or any of those events, but it would feel weird to have him not dip into it just a little bit and not feel like he's part of that universe anymore. So I'm actually kind of two minds with this one. I'd be happy if it went one way. I'm fine with it going the other. But I guess my question to you, Brad, is how would you see Spider-Man 3 and the rest of the Spider-Verse continue on if you were calling the shots?
Oh, well, if you get stuck with Sony, I don't know.
No, I'm with you. Like, I kind of don't know either, in the sense of like,
yeah.
it could be good no matter who has it. Like, they could take Phil Lord and Chris Miller and they could go, you know what? You did such a good job with Into the Spider-Verse. Why don't you just do the next Spider-Man movie? And it could be even better than anything we've seen before.
Honestly,
go ahead.
like if they just need to move on from Peter Parker. Like, if they try to continue with Tom Holland, it's going to be difficult because there are so many gaps that they're going to have to fill that they can't necessarily talk about in the Sonyverse.
But they can also actually do more too, because like I mentioned before, like MJ had to be called MJ. She couldn't be called Mary Jane Watson because of what was tied up with her going over there. So some of the things that Spider-Man had access to were only on the Sony side specifically, because this is one of the reasons I actually hate the split when it happened in the first place, is because because these two companies are butting heads, that they can't let Spider-Man just be Spider-Man. They have to take and only have access to him on this side over here with certain things. And if he goes back to the other side, he only has certain things over here. And it's just stupid. Either make Spider-Man with everything accessible to him or don't make him at all. It's kind of like how I feel about the Hulk. Is like, don't give me this, with all due respect, because I like Mark Ruffalo, friend of the family, all that stuff. Good dude and an interesting take on the Hulk, but he hasn't had a solo movie as that Hulk and that actor because of all the shit that's tied up over at Universal. If you can't do that, don't give me that Hulk, because you don't give me a proper origin. You don't give me a proper movie to invest in that character. And don't get me wrong, that Hulk has been a very enjoyable piece, but he's a piece. He doesn't feel, and not, I don't even know if I call it a piece. He's just a side character that gets a little bit of extended screen time. And I think the Hulk, as a major pillar of the Marvel universe, deserves way more than that, in my opinion. And I think Spider-Man deserves better too. And as good as the movies have been, you should have access. Like, he should be able to, and I don't know who's got what, and I'm not going to spend all day with that, but like, he should be able to have Mary Jane Watson. He should be able to have Hobgoblin. He should be able to have all these characters exist in the same universe and not have it be like, well, we're just going to call her MJ, but it's actually Michelle, and she's going to have similar characteristics. Or he's going to be called Ned Leeds, but he's not Hobgoblin, never will be. He's just kind of like a friend of Peter's, and like all this stuff that if it was in someone else's hands would be completely different. Just make the character with full access and do something fun with them. I don't care if it's Sony. I don't care if it's, like there was a joke that was going around about like, what if Superman was done over at Marvel in the MCU? Some people hated that idea. And then, Marvel fans, I think, love the idea because they're like, we could do Superman better than you can. Do like a Man of Steel too. But like, as long as you have full access to the character and you treat it with respect, that's really all I care about at the end of the day. I don't care who's making the movie, really. So, any other final thoughts on Spider-Man before we call this one a day?
I hope that Disney and Sony reach some minor agreement.
Me too. Yeah.
Because MCU is going to feel a little empty without Spider-Man, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, because I want them both to make money. I want them to share the character. I just want them to treat it with respect. And especially with all the drama that's been drummed up out of all this, I mean, clearly the Marvel fan base is like, shaken to their core and they want their guy back and it's all this stuff. If they can find a way to come to true terms that, no one's really being taken advantage of and they make some good movies, that's all I care about at the end of the day. So that's it. And thank you guys for listening to this episode. I was supposed to do a shout out to it earlier when we were talking about Ewan McGregor. Fans of ours may or may not know this one. Some of them know inside conversations that I've had. There was a little tiff I had with one Gary Whitta, and I thought it was a bigger deal than it was. I actually met him at Silicon Valley Comic-Con. He was super nice, and anyone who thought I had like a real beef with him, I guess he did not feel that way at all. I think he was just ribbing me on air one time. So I went and talked to him. He's got a new comic book, Oliver, that you guys should definitely check out. It's basically like a futuristic take on Oliver Twist. I bought 3 of his variant covers. And let's see. He wrote For Ryan, Best Friends Forever. Ryan, you're a kind of funny best friend. It's, like Greg Miller, who we've had on the show. He works with them. And then he also put to Ryan, keep on podcasting. So kudos to Gary. He's a good dude. And his whole family was there. A lot of fun talking with him. So no bad blood there. Awesome guy. Go check out his work and, maybe buy a copy of Oliver. It's on print with Image Comics right now. So go support him. Support any of the other people that we saw at Silicon Valley Comic-Con. We actually met the guys from B Squad Comics who are part of Starburns Industries, the folks who do like Rick and Morty stuff and all that, and a whole bunch of other people who we'll get to in the future, including a potential sponsor of ours, Mocha Shots, who we'll be talking about in future episodes. But in terms of following us and helping us out, you can always find us at the Nerd Rage Pod on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook, the Nerd Rage Podcast. We have our Patreon. We have our, I'm trying to think of what else, TeePublic store. Pretty much put in Nerd Rage anywhere, whether it's podcasts or whatever, and you'll be able to find us. Go support us anywhere where podcasts are found. Find us on our website, thenerdragepodcast.com, which I will be writing some new reviews after this is over for the new Fred Durst movie that has John Travolta in it and a bunch of other cool stuff that I can't wait to share with you guys that we got early access to. I think that's it. So thank you for listening to this episode for the Nerd Rage Podcast. I've been Ryan Anderson.
And I'm Brad Lerman.
See you guys again.